Captain Ibrahim Traoré.
After young officers ousted Burkina Faso, people are celebrating the appointment of Traoré as president.
What connects a colonel from Libya and a young captain from Burkina Faso? Two men, two eras, two nations born in struggle, but one shared vision: to tear Africa free from the grip of Western power. This isn't just history. This is a warning, a prophecy, and a spark. From Gaddafi to Traoré, this is the rise of Africa's anti-West leaders. In 1969, a 27-year-old officer with fire in his eyes took over Libya. He didn't come from a palace. He didn't wear medals or diamonds. His name was Muammar Gaddafi. What he lacked in rank, he made up for in purpose. He saw a Libya robbed of its wealth. Western oil companies bled the desert dry while Libyans drank from broken wells. Foreign flags flew above ports and refineries. The nation was independent in name, but chained in every other way. Gaddafi changed that overnight. He nationalized Libya's oil. He told the world's richest companies, "This land is ours now." He used the profits to build schools, hospitals, homes, roads. For the first time, Libya's oil was flowing for its people. He called for unity, not just for Libya, but for the entire continent. He dreamed of a United States of Africa, one currency, one army, one flag, a continent standing as one, no longer divided by colonial borders. But his dream came at a cost. The West saw Gaddafi as a threat, not because of weapons, but because of ideas, because he dared to speak against the petrodollar, because he proposed a gold-backed African currency, a move that could shake the foundations of global finance, because he told African nations to stop begging and start owning. And that was unacceptable. They called him a madman. They mocked his speeches. They accused him of terrorism, of tyranny, of chaos, and then they waited. In 2011, after years of tension and isolation, the perfect moment came. Libya was destabilized, protests rose, and the West moved fast. NATO jets dropped bombs on Libyan soil. Under the name of human rights, they destroyed roads, cities, communication lines, and finally, Gaddafi was captured, dragged through the streets, killed on camera. The man who once challenged the empire was gone, but his dream that Africa could stand on its own remained. Years passed. Libya fell into chaos. Other leaders took note. The message was clear: challenge the system, and you will be erased. But far from the Mediterranean, in the heart of West Africa, a new voice began to rise. Not a dictator, not a warlord, just a young, determined army captain named Ibrahim Traoré.
I am Ibrahim Traoré, and today I'm pulling off your masks.
Burkina Faso, a nation known more for poverty than power, its land dry and dusty, its people rich in culture but battered by conflict. For years, foreign forces filled the country, fighting so-called terrorism, but with every year, the violence grew, the promises of peace broken again and again.
In reality, the colonel exercised nearly total control of government.
They had buried their children, not from famine or disease, but from bullets fired in battles they never chose. They had waited for peace, but peace never came. So when a young captain stood up and said, "No more," they didn't ask for his credentials. They didn't care for his age. They only cared that for the first time in years, someone was speaking their pain out loud. Ibrahim Traoré wasn't polished. He didn't wear expensive suits or speak in perfect French. He wore his uniform like a second skin, dusty, worn, real. And that made all the difference. He didn't arrive with slogans. He arrived with action. He took power not to rule, but to rebuild. He walked through towns where bombs had fallen. He sat with mothers who had lost sons to foreign wars. He asked not for permission, but for trust. And slowly, he earned it. He didn't say he would fix everything. He said they would fix it, together. And when the oil was found, that heavy, dark, powerful substance, he didn't sell it off to the highest bidder. He protected it. Because he knew what oil could do. He had seen it before, how it made kings of corporations and slaves of nations.
Every day of my life, I grew up with your lies. As a child, I would watch Africa on television, always the same.
He remembered Libya. He remembered Gaddafi. He remembered what happens when an African leader dares to own what lies beneath his soil. But still, he moved forward. With every new field discovered, foreign interest grew. Offers came dressed as aid, wrapped in contracts too complex to understand. But Traoré understood enough. He saw through the handshakes, through the smiles, and he said no. Not this time. Not again. He built fences around the wells, not to keep the people out, but to keep the thieves away. He formed local task forces made of teachers, farmers, and youth to protect what had never been theirs before. He created scholarships to train engineers, scientists, and planners, so the future would be run by the sons and daughters of Burkina Faso, not foreign experts flown in for profit. The oil was no longer just fuel, it was pride, it was power. It was proof that the land had value, and so did the people. And when foreign news channels called him a threat, the people laughed, because they knew the truth. A threat to who? To the ones who had always taken, or to those finally taking back?
The president of the Patriotic Movement for Safeguarding and Restoration will serve as head of state and supreme commander of the National Armed Forces.
They called him reckless, accused him of isolating his country. But Traoré remained unmoved. He understood what was at stake. Burkina Faso's oil could build an independent future, or become a weapon in someone else's hands. He had seen the pattern before, in Congo, in Nigeria, in Libya. Nations rich in resources, but poor in power. Their wealth drained, their people left behind. He refused to let history repeat itself, and so he tightened control. He began training local engineers to run the refineries. He invested in new infrastructure, powered not by loans from Paris, but by grit from the people. He redirected the military, not just for defense, but for protection of national resources. Pipelines were patrolled, drilling sites guarded. Every drop of oil had to serve the people. Of course, the world noticed. Foreign governments issued statements of concern. Financial institutions predicted collapse, but at home, something rare was happening. Unity. For the first time in decades, the people believed the wealth under their feet might actually belong to them. They gathered in village halls and dusty fields to discuss the future. Farmers who once feared raids now spoke of agriculture programs funded by oil profits. Youth groups offered to volunteer at sites, guarding them like sacred ground. The black gold had become more than fuel. It was a symbol of sovereignty, of dignity, of rebirth. But resistance grew louder too. Powerful interests don't sleep. When money is threatened, pressure follows. Sabotage attempts increased. Explosions rocked newly built sites. Communications were jammed. Burkina Faso's image was attacked in international media. And still, the work continued. Traoré didn't blink. He called these attacks exactly what they were, acts of economic warfare, and he pushed harder. He met with leaders across Africa. Quietly, a new network began to form, one not approved by Washington or Brussels, one built on shared pain and a shared dream. They spoke of trade without middlemen, of tech without surveillance, of an Africa that didn't need permission to prosper. The alliance grew. Mali, Niger, Guinea, Chad. One by one, the old influence began to crack, and young Africans noticed. Social media filled with videos of speeches, of celebrations when foreign troops left, of oil wells guarded not by contractors, but by the people. For many, it was a return to pride, to seeing Africa as more than charity, to seeing leaders who didn't flinch. But Traoré also knew the cost. He saw what happened to Gaddafi. He knew the fate of Thomas Sankara, another revolutionary from Burkina Faso, who was assassinated for daring too much. He understood the line he was walking, and how thin it really was. Yet he kept walking, because stepping back meant surrender, and surrender wasn't an option. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. More untold truths are coming, and this is just the beginning.